At midnight on New Year's Eve, she sent 3 words meant for her ex, "I'm pregnant," and by the time the fireworks faded, the reply came from the last man she should ever belong to. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe.
New Year's Eve always felt louder when you had no one to kiss at midnight.
Fireworks cracked open the sky outside Madison Cole's apartment window, bursts of gold and red reflecting off the glass like distant promises she wasn't part of. Somewhere below, people shouted, laughed, counted down with strangers they would forget by morning. Inside her 1-bedroom apartment, the only sound was the low hum of the radiator and the slow, uneven rhythm of her own breathing. She stood barefoot on the cold kitchen tile, a half-empty bottle of champagne sweating onto the counter. She hadn't planned on drinking much. 1 glass had turned into 3. Not enough to make the room spin, just enough to soften the edges of reality, just enough to make the ache in her chest throb instead of scream. 8 weeks. The word echoed in her mind like a ticking clock. 8 weeks pregnant. 8 weeks since her life had quietly split into before and after. 8 weeks since Connor had smiled at her across this same counter, kissed her forehead, and told her everything would be fine. It wasn't. Her phone lay face down beside the champagne bottle. She hadn't touched it in an hour. Hadn't needed to. Every unread message from friends, every group chat countdown, felt like a reminder that she was supposed to be somewhere else, happy, loved, chosen. She flipped the phone over anyway. 11:59 p.m. 1 minute until the new year. 1 minute until the world reset, and she stayed exactly the same. Her thumb hovered over the screen, muscle memory pulling up a familiar contact. Connor. Or what used to be Connor. She hadn't spoken to him in weeks. The last conversation had ended with silence so final, it still rang in her ears. He hadn't wanted complications. He hadn't wanted responsibility. He definitely hadn't wanted a baby. She should have deleted his number. She thought she had. Fireworks exploded again, closer this time, rattling the windows. Madison swallowed hard, her chest tightening. Fear surged up her throat, raw and sudden. The champagne buzz didn't help. It loosened the lock on emotions she'd been keeping contained. What if I do this alone? The thought terrified her more than anything else. Her fingers moved before her brain caught up. "I'm pregnant." 3 words. No punctuation. No explanation. A confession fired into the dark. She stared at the screen, heart pounding as the message sent. Relief flooded her for half a second, like she'd finally exhaled after holding her breath for weeks. Then the name above the text thread caught her eye. Unknown number. Her stomach dropped so hard she thought she might be sick. "What?" she whispered. Her thumb flew to the contact details. No name, no photo, just a string of numbers she didn't recognize. Cold dread washed over her, slicing clean through the alcohol haze. No. She scrolled back, panic rising as realization slammed into her. Connor's number was gone. Deleted during one of her braver moments weeks ago, when she'd sworn she was done begging for someone who didn't want her. The number she'd just texted wasn't him. Fireworks roared outside, the crowd below erupting into cheers as midnight struck. Happy New Year echoed through the streets. Madison barely heard it. Her hands shook as she locked the phone, then unlocked it again like that might change reality. Her mind raced, already crafting apologies, explanations, excuses. Wrong number. Please ignore. I'm so sorry. She started typing. I'm sorry, that message wasn't meant. The phone buzzed. Her breath caught. The unfinished apology froze on the screen. A new message slid into view. Unknown number, who is this? Her pulse hammered in her ears. She stared at the words, heat crawling up her neck. This was mortifying, terrifying. She imagined some random stranger, drunk at a party, laughing at the midnight confession of a woman he'd never met. She typed quickly, fingers clumsy. I'm so sorry. Wrong number. Please ignore. The message sent. She hugged her arms around herself, shame settling heavy in her chest. Tomorrow she'd laugh about this. Someday it would be a story about the dumb things people do when they're scared and alone. The phone buzzed again. She didn't want to look. She looked anyway. Unknown number? You don't accidentally text something like that. Her mouth went dry. Another vibration followed before she could respond. Unknown number. How far along are you? The champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the tile. Madison stared at the screen, fireworks still bursting outside as the new year began, completely unaware that somewhere, on the other end of a wrong number, someone was asking questions that could change her life forever. Madison didn't breathe for a full 3 seconds after the glass shattered. Champagne crept across the kitchen floor, bubbling softly around her bare feet, but she barely felt the cold. Her entire body had gone rigid, every nerve pulled tight by the words glowing on her phone. You don't accidentally text something like that. How far along are you? Her heart slammed against her ribs, each beat louder than the fireworks still echoing outside. She crouched down slowly, gathering shards of glass with trembling fingers, more to give herself something to do than out of concern for the mess. Her mind raced, panic chasing panic in vicious circles. Don't answer! Block the number. Delete everything. She should have done all 3. Instead, she stared at the screen, throat tight, as the reality settled in. Whoever this was, he wasn't laughing. He wasn't joking. There was no drunken confusion in the message, no emojis, no exclamation points, just calm, measured words that felt heavier than they should have. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. 8 weeks, she almost typed, then stopped. Why would I tell him anything? Because some part of her already knew this wasn't just some stranger. The phone buzzed again, short and insistent, like a knock on a door she hadn't invited anyone to. Unknown. Number. You're shaking right now. Her breath hitched. That's ridiculous, she told herself. He couldn't possibly know that. It was coincidence. A lucky guess. People panic when they send wrong texts all the time. Still, she hugged her arms around herself, as if he could somehow see through the screen. Who is this? She typed, deleting it twice before sending. The response came almost immediately. This is not your ex, but if you are carrying my child, we need to talk. The words seemed to dim the room, pulling all the air out of it. My child. A sharp laugh escaped her before she could stop it, brittle and disbelieving. This was insane. She hadn't been with anyone else. Connor was the only man she'd slept with in over a year. There was no universe in which this stranger had any claim to what was growing inside her. You have the wrong person, she typed. I'm not carrying your child. The reply came slower this time, deliberate. That's what you hope. Her fingers went numb. What kind of man says that? The fireworks outside reached a finale, a thunderous cascade of sound and light. Midnight had passed. The new year had begun, and Madison felt like she was standing on the edge of something dark and unknowable. I'm ending this conversation, she wrote, forcing steadiness into her words. Please don't contact me again. She hit send and immediately blocked the number. Her chest heaved as she leaned back against the counter, sliding down until she was sitting on the floor amid broken glass and spilled champagne. Her hands pressed to her stomach instinctively, a protective gesture she hadn't even realized she'd adopted yet. It's nothing, she told herself. Just a creepy stranger. A coincidence. Tomorrow she'd wake up, clean the mess, and start the year fresh. The phone buzzed. Her heart lurched. Blocked numbers can't... The screen lit up anyway. Unknown number. Blocking me won't make this go away, Madison. The phone slipped from her hand. Her name. He knew her name. A cold, slow dread crawled up her spine, settling deep in her bones. She snatched the phone back up, eyes scanning the screen like the words might change if she blinked hard enough. How do you know my name? This time the pause stretched longer, long enough for her imagination to spiral, long enough for her to picture men in dark suits, shadows moving just out of sight, doors closing quietly behind her. Finally, the reply appeared. Because you texted me from a phone I already had flagged. Because I don't ignore messages like that. And because mistakes like yours tend to belong to people who are already on someone's radar. Her mouth went dry. What radar? Her fingers trembled as she typed. You're scaring me. That was a mistake. Good. You should be careful right now. Her vision blurred. Tears pricked at her eyes, equal parts fear and fury. You don't get to threaten me, she shot back. You're a stranger. Another pause, then. I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you that if you are pregnant, you're no longer invisible. And if the child is mine, walking away is not an option. Madison pressed her palm to her mouth, a sob threatening to escape. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. She typed one last message, desperation bleeding through every word. I don't know who you think you are, but you're wrong. I'm hanging up. Don't contact me again. The reply came immediately. I will contact you again. Soon. Then, just as her heart began to race uncontrollably, one final message appeared. Sleep if you can, Madison. Tomorrow we talk. The screen went dark. Outside, the last of the fireworks faded into smoke, and Madison sat alone on her kitchen floor, staring at her phone, knowing with terrifying certainty that her life had just been claimed by someone who didn't ask for permission. Madison didn't sleep. She lay on top of the covers, fully dressed. Phone clutched in her hand like it might ring again if she let it go. Every sound in the building made her flinch. The creak of pipes, footsteps in the hallway, a door slamming somewhere below. The dark hours stretched thin and sharp, each minute dragging her closer to a morning she didn't want to face. At some point near dawn, exhaustion pulled her into something like sleep. Not rest, just shallow drifting filled with fragments of fireworks and glowing screens, and a man's calm voice telling her she wasn't invisible anymore. Light crept through the blinds, gray, cold, silent. Madison sat up slowly, her neck stiff, her head throbbing. For a moment, she almost convinced herself it had all been a nightmare. Drunk texting, anxiety, New Year's Eve regret. Then she looked at her phone. No new messages, no missed calls. That somehow felt worse. She stood and moved to the window, pushing aside the blinds just enough to look down at the street. Snow had fallen overnight, a thin white layer coating the sidewalks and parked cars. Everything looked clean, normal, peaceful. Her breath fogged the glass. 3 black cars sat at the curb directly in front of her building. They were too clean, too still. Engines idling softly, exhaust curling into the cold air. No one inside them moved, but she could feel the weight of their presence like pressure against her chest. Her pulse spiked. This isn't real. This is paranoia. She scanned the street again, counting. 1, 2, 3. Dark windows. No plates she could see from this angle. A black SUV pulled in behind them and came to a smooth stop. Madison stumbled back from the window, heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She pressed a hand to her stomach, breath coming fast and shallow. Okay. Think. Call someone. Call the police. What would she say? There are cars outside? They haven't done anything. They're just there. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She didn't need to look to know who it was. I'm downstairs.
The message was simple, unadorned, final.
Her legs felt weak as she sank onto the edge of the bed. This was happening. Whatever she'd stumbled into with that stupid, scared text the night before had followed her into the morning with terrifying efficiency. She typed back with shaking fingers. You can't be here. The response came instantly. I already am. She swallowed hard. People didn't just show up like this unless they were used to taking what they wanted, used to being obeyed. What do you want? She typed. To meet you. To make sure you're safe. And to confirm something important. Her stomach twisted. I'm not coming down, she wrote. though even as she did, she knew how hollow the words sounded. There was a pause, longer than before. Deliberate. Then, "I don't force doors, Madison." "I wait." Her gaze drifted to the front door of her apartment. The cheap lock, the thin wood, the chain she never used because it felt pointless. Her phone buzzed again. "You have 5 minutes." Anger flared through the fear, sudden and sharp. "You don't get to give me ultimatums." Another pause, then, "You're right. You get the choice. Come down willingly, or I send someone up to escort you." Escort. The word wrapped itself around her spine like ice. She stood abruptly, pacing the small apartment. Her reflection in the mirror by the door looked pale, eyes too big, hair a mess from a sleepless night. She looked like someone on the verge of disappearing. Her coat hung on the hook by the door. She pulled it on with jerky movements, hands fumbling with the zipper. She slipped on boots, barely bothering with socks. Her heart hammered as she grabbed her keys, her phone, her wallet. "You don't have to do this," she told herself. But some instinct deeper than fear whispered that hiding would only make things worse. Her phone buzzed once more as she reached for the door handle. "I'm not a patient man, Madison. But I've been known to wait for things that matter." She rested her forehead briefly against the door, breathing in and out, steadying herself. "This doesn't mean anything," she thought. "This is just a conversation. I'll hear him out. Then I'll leave. I'll take back control." She unlocked the door. The hallway outside was empty, quiet, lit by flickering fluorescent lights. Each step toward the elevator felt heavier than the last. The ride down was slow, every floor marked by a soft ding that echoed too loudly. When the elevator doors opened into the lobby, the warmth of the building gave way to cold air rushing in from the street as the front doors swung open. 2 men stood just inside, both in dark coats, both scanning the space with sharp, practiced attention. One of them noticed her immediately and straightened, murmuring something into his sleeve. Madison's breath caught. The front door opened wider. Snow swirled in on a gust of wind, and beyond it, framed by falling white and black metal, stood a man who looked nothing like the danger he represented, and everything like someone who owned it. His gaze locked onto hers, and as Madison stepped forward, crossing the threshold, she knew there was no turning back. The cold hit her first. It slipped beneath her coat, sharp and biting, stealing her breath as soon as she stepped outside. Snow fell steadily now, soft but relentless, dusting the shoulders of the men standing near the entrance and settling on the black cars idling at the curb. They didn't look surprised to see her. That unsettled her more than anything. One of the men opened the rear door of the nearest car without being told, not rushing her, not touching her, just waiting, like this outcome had already been decided. Madison didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the man standing a few steps away from the vehicle. He wasn't young, not old either, mid-30s, maybe early 40s. Tall, broad-shouldered beneath a dark wool coat tailored so precisely it probably cost more than her rent. Snow clung to his hair and lashes, melting slowly, unnoticed. His face was sharp in a way that made you pay attention. Strong jaw, dark eyes that missed nothing, a thin scar cutting through one eyebrow like a warning left behind on purpose. He didn't smile, didn't frown. His expression was calm, controlled, utterly unreadable. Dangerous, her mind supplied immediately. Not loud danger, not reckless. The kind that didn't need to announce itself. "Madison Cole," he said. Her name sounded different in his voice, heavier, like it carried weight she hadn't known it had. "Yes," she answered, surprised her voice didn't shake. He nodded once, as if confirming something he already knew. "I'm glad you came down." "I didn't really have a choice," she said. One corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "You always have a choice. You just chose the option with fewer unknowns." That sent a chill down her spine. He gestured toward the open car door. "May we talk somewhere warmer?"
I'm not getting in your car, she said immediately.
His gaze held hers, steady and assessing. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The men around them remained still, statues with eyes. Finally, he inclined his head. Fair. He turned slightly, indicating the building behind her. Then we'll talk here. For now.
For now.
Madison folded her arms tightly across her chest. You showed up uninvited. You sent me messages in the middle of the night. You knew my name. I think you owe me an explanation. He agreed easily. That surprised her. My name is Adrian Moretti, he continued, and the message you sent last night was not an accident. Her breath caught. Excuse me? You didn't mean to send it to me, he clarified calmly. But you sent it to the right person. Her heart began to race again. That doesn't make any sense. It will. He stepped closer, not invading her space, but near enough that she felt the gravity of him. His voice dropped slightly, lower now, more private despite the open street. You're pregnant, he said. Not a question. Her hand went instinctively to her stomach. That fact, he continued, puts you in a category that requires my attention. I don't belong to you, she snapped. His eyes darkened, not with anger, but something colder. No, you don't. Relief flared, brief and fragile. But the child does, he added. The world seemed to tilt. That's impossible, she said hoarsely. You're wrong. I don't know you. I've never met you. Not in person, he agreed. But that doesn't change responsibility. Responsibility? Her laugh came out sharp, hysterical. You can't just claim someone's baby because of a wrong text. I'm not claiming, he said quietly. I'm acknowledging. She shook her head, backing away a step. You're not making sense. I was with my ex, only him. This is insane. Adrian watched her carefully, like he was studying a volatile situation. Your ex is not the only variable in your life, Madison. You just didn't know that yet. Fear clawed at her chest. What do you want from me? His answer came without hesitation. Proof, he said. And protection. Her pulse thundered. Protection from what? His gaze flicked briefly to the street, to the cars, to the men standing guard, before returning to her face. From the moment you sent that message, he said softly, you stopped being invisible. Pregnant women connected to my world don't stay safe by accident. I don't want to be connected to your world, she whispered. I know, he said. And for the first time, something almost like regret crossed his face. But wanting has very little to do with how this works. He stepped back, giving her space again. I'll give you time, he said, but not much. We confirm the pregnancy, we confirm the timeline, and until that's done, you'll be under my protection. And if I say no, his gaze sharpened, then you'll be unprotected, he replied simply. And that's not a risk I'm willing to take, for you, or for the child. Snow fell between them, quiet and relentless. Madison stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring at the man everyone feared, realizing with dawning horror that her life had just been placed under his control, and he wasn't asking for permission. Madison didn't realize how cold she was until her teeth began to chatter. Snow clung to the hem of her coat now, melting into damp patches that seeped through the fabric. The street felt too open, too exposed. Every passing car sounded like a threat. Every shadow felt like it was watching her. Adrian noticed. He removed his coat in one smooth motion and draped it over her shoulders before she could protest. The weight of it settled around her like a shield, warm, heavy, faintly scented with something dark and clean. I didn't say you could, she started. You're shaking, he said calmly. Argue later. She clenched her jaw but didn't shrug it off. Part of her hated that she needed it. Another part hated that he'd noticed. They stood like that for a moment, snow falling quietly around them, the men by the cars maintaining their silent perimeter. Madison's heart still pounded, but fear was shifting into something sharper now. Anger. determination. "You keep talking like I'm already in danger," she said. "But you're the only one who's shown up at my door." "That's because I'm faster than the others," Adrian replied. Her breath caught. "Others?" He met her gaze steadily. "You sent a message from a number tied to a network I monitor closely. Not because of you, but because of people who orbit your ex. You didn't know that, but they will notice now." She shook her head. "This sounds like paranoia." "It's preparation," he corrected. "There's a difference." One of the men near the cars spoke quietly into an earpiece. Adrian glanced over briefly, then back to her. "We shouldn't stay here," he said. "This conversation doesn't belong on a sidewalk." "I told you I'm not getting in your car." "You won't," he said. "Not yet." He stepped closer again, lowering his voice. "But you need to understand something before you make any decisions." Madison crossed her arms, his coat still wrapped around her. "Then talk." "Pregnancy creates leverage," he said simply. "And leverage invites attention, especially in my world." "I'm not part of your world," she snapped. "Not by choice," he agreed. "But that doesn't matter to the people who would use you." A knot twisted in her stomach. "Use me how?" His jaw tightened, just slightly, enough to tell her this wasn't theoretical. "To get to me," he said, "or to someone connected to me. Rivals don't attack directly when there are softer targets." Her hand drifted to her stomach again. This time she didn't stop it. "You're saying someone would hurt me," she whispered. "I'm saying they would threaten you," he replied. "And I don't wait to see how far threats go." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. "What do you want?" she asked again, her voice quieter now. Adrian didn't hesitate. "Safety," he said. "Silence. And my name." Her head snapped up. "Your name?" "Yes." "For what?" "For protection," he said. "For access. For authority." Her pulse spiked. "You want me to lie?" "I want you to survive." She took a step back. "You don't get to rewrite my life because of your enemies." "I'm not rewriting it," he said evenly. "I'm preventing it from being erased." And that sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold. "My name opens doors," he continued. "It closes others. If people think you belong to me, they think twice. They hesitate. Sometimes that's the difference between danger and safety." "And what happens to me in the meantime?" she demanded. "Do I disappear? Do I become invisible again?" "No," he said. "You become untouchable." Her laugh was hollow. "By pretending I belong to a man I don't even know." "You know enough," he replied. "And you'll know more if you accept." "And if I don't?" He held her gaze, didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten. "Then I'll still protect you," he said. "From a distance, with fewer options, and less control." The honesty of it stole her breath. "You're really like this," she said softly. "You really think you can decide things for people." "I think," he said just as softly, "that people deserve to live long enough to choose their own future." She looked away, staring at the snow-covered street. Her world had narrowed to two paths, neither of them safe, one of them just less terrifying. "What does this deal actually look like?" she asked. Adrian's voice dropped, controlled, and final. "You come with me," he said. "You stay somewhere secure. You don't talk about last night, about me, about the pregnancy." "And in return?" "You're protected," he said. "No one touches you. No one asks questions. And when the child is born, they carry my name." Her breath stuttered. "That's insane." "It's survival." She turned back to him. "And where would I stay?" His gaze didn't waver. "With me." The word hung between them, heavy and unavoidable. "You'll stay with me," Adrian said, not as a command, but as a fact. And Madison knew in the deepest part of herself that the deal had already been sealed. The gates closed behind them with a sound Madison felt more than heard. A deep, metallic finality echoed through the car as it rolled forward. the city disappearing behind wrought iron and towering stone. Snow blanketed everything beyond the perimeter. Manicured grounds, tall pines. Paths cleared with meticulous precision. Lights glowed softly along the drive, warm and golden, in sharp contrast to the cold world she'd left behind. Madison pressed her hands together in her lap, staring out the window as the car moved deeper into Adrian's world. It was beautiful. That unsettled her almost as much as the guards posted at regular intervals, their presence subtle but unmistakable. Cameras were mounted discreetly along the drive, their dark lenses tracking movement with silent vigilance, luxury wrapped in surveillance. The car stopped beneath a covered entrance. A massive door opened before they fully halted, as if the house itself had been waiting for them. "Welcome," Adrian said, his voice low, "to the place where people stop asking questions." She didn't respond. Inside, warmth enveloped her immediately. The foyer soared upward, all stone and dark wood, lit by chandeliers that cast soft light across polished floors. Everything was immaculate. Expensive without being ostentatious. Designed not to impress, but to endure. A woman appeared almost instantly, dark-haired, impeccably dressed. "I'm Lucia," she said, offering a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You must be Madison." Madison blinked. "Everyone knows my name." Lucia's smile tightened slightly. "Information travels quickly here." Adrian removed his coat and handed it off to another staff member. "She's under my protection," he said. "No exceptions." Lucia nodded. "Of course." Madison felt it then, the shift. The invisible hand closing around her life. She was shown to a suite on the second floor. Not a room. A suite. Plush bed, sitting area, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the snow-covered grounds. A bathroom larger than her apartment. Marble gleaming under soft light. Her bags, when had they been packed, were already there. "You didn't ask me what I wanted," she said quietly. Adrian stood near the door, arms crossed, watching her take it all in. "You didn't ask what I could offer." That wasn't an answer. Lucia spoke gently. "There are rules," she said. "They're not meant to confine you. They're meant to keep you alive." Madison turned to her. "What kind of rules?" "No leaving the property alone," Lucia said. "No visitors without clearance. No phone calls we don't vet." Madison's stomach tightened. "You're monitoring my calls?" "We monitor threats," Adrian said calmly. "Calls are just one way they come. And if I break a rule?" His gaze sharpened. "You won't." The certainty in his voice sent an unexpected thrill down her spine. She hated that. Hated that some part of her responded to it. Dinner was served in a private dining room. The food was exquisite. She barely tasted it. Adrian watched her carefully, like he was cataloging every reaction, every hesitation. "You don't have to stay silent," he said. "I'm trying to figure out where I fit in all this," she replied. He leaned back in his chair. "You don't. Not yet." That answer should have reassured her. Instead, it left her unsteady. Over the next few days, Madison learned the rhythms of the house. Guards changed shifts with military precision. Doors locked and unlocked silently. Staff appeared when needed and vanished just as quickly. She was never alone. And yet, she was never crowded either. Adrian was always somewhere nearby, his presence a constant pressure she couldn't ignore. He didn't hover, didn't intrude. But when he entered a room, everything seemed to recalibrate around him. She caught herself noticing things she shouldn't. The way his voice softened when he spoke to her alone. The way his gaze lingered a second too long when he thought she wasn't looking. The way he stood between her and others without thinking. Protection, yes. Control, too. One evening, she found him in the study, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, reading something that looked far too serious for the hour. "You don't sleep much," she said. "Sleep is a luxury," he replied. Then quieter. "So is trust." The air shifted between them. She should have stepped back. Instead, she stayed. That night, as she lay in the massive bed staring at the ceiling, she realized something that frightened her more than the guards or the cameras. She felt safe. Her phone buzzed just after midnight. Her heart lurched as she grabbed it, expecting his name. Instead, the screen displayed something that made her blood run cold. Connor. A missed call, followed by a text. "Where are you?" "Someone came looking for you." Madison's breath hitched. Her past had found her, and she knew with terrifying certainty that nothing in Adrian's world stayed untouched once it crossed his threshold. The fireworks were gone, but the echoes of them still seemed to live under Madison's skin. She stood by the window of her suite, watching snow drift lazily across the grounds, the estate bathed in quiet light. From a distance, it looked peaceful, untouched, like the world beyond the gates didn't exist. That illusion shattered the moment her phone buzzed again. Connor's name still sat on the screen, ugly and familiar. Another text. "They asked about you. Men I've never seen before." Madison, what the hell did you get yourself into? Her fingers tightened around the phone until her knuckles ached. She didn't reply. Instead, she wrapped her arms around herself and stared out into the dark, feeling the fragile sense of safety she'd built here begin to crack. Adrian had warned her. About leverage, about attention, about how quickly invisibility could be stripped away. She heard footsteps behind her. Adrian didn't announce himself. He never did. He just appeared, presence filling the room like gravity. "You're awake," he said quietly. She turned, holding up the phone. "He found me." Adrian's jaw tightened as he took the phone from her hand, eyes scanning the messages. He didn't look surprised. That frightened her more than anger would have. "They didn't hurt him," she said quickly. "At least, I don't think so." "They wouldn't," Adrian replied. "Not yet, not yet." He handed the phone back. "I told you the past doesn't stay buried once it's useful." "So this is my fault," she said bitterly. "No," he said firmly. "This is inevitable." He moved to the window beside her, gaze sweeping the perimeter beyond the glass. "Someone's been testing my reach, quietly, watching how I respond." "To what?" she asked. "To you." The word landed like a blow. "You're saying this is about me." "I'm saying," he corrected, "that you are now part of the equation, and the baby makes you valuable." Her hand went to her stomach, fear blooming sharp and sudden. "To who?" Adrian didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was colder than she'd ever heard it. "A man named Luca Vescari." The name meant nothing to her. The way Adrian said it made it mean everything. "He runs a rival operation," Adrian continued. "Older than me, less patient. He believes fear is more effective than loyalty." Madison swallowed. "And he knows about me." "He suspected," Adrian said. "Tonight confirmed it." Her breath caught. "How?" Adrian reached into his coat pocket and withdrew something wrapped in cloth. He hesitated for a fraction of a second before placing it on the table. "Because he sent me a message," he said. Madison's pulse thundered in her ears. "What kind of message?" Adrian unwrapped the cloth. Blood stained the white fabric. Her stomach lurched. "Oh my God!" "It's not human," he said immediately. "It's an animal, a warning." Her relief was short-lived, replaced by dread that crawled along her spine. "What does it mean?" Adrian's eyes never left the cloth. "It means he knows where to look, and he wants me to know he's willing to escalate." Madison backed away slowly, legs weak. "You said I'd be untouchable." "You are," Adrian said, turning to her. "That's why this is a warning, not an attack." "Yet," she whispered. "Yes," he agreed. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Somewhere in the distance, a guard's radio crackled softly. Life here continued, tightly controlled, even as something ugly pressed against the edges. "What happens now?" she asked. Adrian stepped closer, his voice low. "Now I close ranks," I tighten security, and I make it very clear that anything under my protection is not available for negotiation. And if he doesn't listen? His gaze hardened. Then I end him. The certainty in his tone sent a shiver through her. Not just fear, but something darker. She was seeing the man everyone feared now. Not the calm protector. Not the controlled negotiator. The king. Her phone buzzed again. A new number. Adrian's eyes flicked to it instantly. Don't answer. She ignored him. The message opened on its own, a photo loading slowly over unstable signal. Madison gasped. It was a picture of her apartment building, taken from across the street. Recent. Snow on the steps. Lights on in the windows. Below it, a second image appeared. A red smear across concrete. Blood. And beneath it, a single line of text. Beautiful fireworks this year. Shame if the next ones aren't so clean. Madison's hands shook violently as the phone slipped from her grasp. Adrian caught it before it hit the floor. His face went completely still. And in that terrifying stillness, Madison understood one undeniable truth. The war had already begun. The house didn't sleep that night. Madison could feel it in the walls, in the muted footsteps moving with purpose, in the low murmur of voices carried through vents and hallways, in the way the air itself felt alert. Security lights cut sharper lines across the snow outside her window. Guards doubled. Doors locked with heavier finality. And yet, inside her room, everything was quiet. Too quiet. She sat curled on the edge of the bed, knees pulled close, phone resting uselessly in her lap. The image from earlier, the blood on concrete, the casual cruelty of the message, played on repeat in her mind. She'd been afraid before. Now fear had teeth. A knock sounded at her door. Not sharp, not commanding. Controlled. Madison, Adrian's voice came through the wood. May I come in? She hesitated only a second. Yes. He entered without his jacket, sleeves rolled up, tie gone. He looked different like this. Less untouchable. Still powerful, still dangerous, but human in a way she hadn't seen before. Tired lines edged his eyes. His jaw was tight, like he'd been holding tension in his body for hours. I wanted to check on you, he said quietly. I'm not sleeping, she replied. I didn't expect you would. He didn't sit immediately. Instead, he stood near the window, hands braced on the sill, looking out at the dark grounds as if measuring distances only he understood. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, softly, I'm sorry. The words surprised her. She looked up. For what? For bringing this to your door, he said. For underestimating how quickly he'd move. She swallowed. You didn't force me to stay. No, he agreed. But I gave you very few reasons to leave. Silence settled again, heavier now but less sharp. Why me? She asked finally. Out of everyone in the world. Why did one wrong message put me in the middle of this? Adrian turned toward her. His gaze softened, not weakened, but unguarded. Because you didn't know, he said. And because innocence is rare in my world. She let out a small, humorless laugh. I don't feel innocent. You are, he said firmly. You didn't choose this, and I don't punish people for circumstances they didn't create. He moved closer and sat in the chair across from the bed, not invading her space, but near enough that she could feel the gravity of him again. You're safe tonight, he continued. No one gets past my perimeter. Not him. Not anyone. And tomorrow? She asked. Tomorrow, he said. We adjust. Her shoulders sagged slightly. Is this what your life is like? Always waiting for the next threat? Yes. The honesty startled her. And you're okay with that? I didn't say that, he replied. She studied him then, really looked, at the man beneath the reputation, beneath the control. You ever wish you could just walk away? she asked. He exhaled slowly. Every day. The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected. She shifted on the bed. Then why don't you? His eyes met hers, steady and intense. Because people depend on me. Because walking away creates a vacuum. And vacuums get filled by worse men. That made sense. Too much sense. And you? He asked suddenly. Do you ever wish you could rewind the last few weeks? Her hand drifted to her stomach again, unconscious. I wish I'd had more time. To be scared privately. To decide things without all this. But not the child, he said quietly. She shook her head. Never the child. Something in his expression shifted then. Subtle, but unmistakable. The edge softened. The armor cracked. They sat like that for a long moment, two people bound by circumstances neither had planned. It gets lonely, she admitted, being surrounded by protection but not knowing who sees you as a person. Adrian's jaw tightened. I saw you. Her breath caught. I see how you hold yourself together when you're terrified, he continued. How you still think about others. How you refuse to disappear, even when it would be easier. She looked away, throat tight. You don't know me. I know enough, he said. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was intimate, dangerous in a different way. I should go, he said finally, standing. You need rest. He reached the door, then stopped. There's something you should understand, he added without turning around. She waited. I've protected assets before, he said. People. Entire families. It's always been strategy. Obligation. He looked back at her then, eyes dark and honest. But this, he said, voice lower now, this is different. Her heart skipped. The child, he continued. The idea of a life that exists because of one moment, one mistake. It changes the equation. He held her gaze unflinching. It changes everything for me. And with that, he left her alone in the quiet room. Heart racing, future uncertain, knowing that protection had crossed a line neither of them could step back from. Morning came quietly, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Madison woke to pale light filtering through the curtains, snow still falling beyond the glass in slow, deliberate flakes. For a few precious seconds she forgot where she was. Forgot the gates, the guards, the blood-stained warning that had shattered the illusion of safety. Then memory rushed back in. Her phone sat untouched on the nightstand. No new messages, no threats, no demands. That, more than anything, unsettled her. She showered, letting the hot water pound against her shoulders, trying to rinse away fear she knew wouldn't leave so easily. She dressed slowly, choosing comfort over elegance, grounding herself in small, human decisions. When she stepped into the hallway, the house felt different, still controlled, still guarded, but quieter, watchful. She found Adrian in the study. He stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. Dark suit perfectly tailored, expression carved from calm. If she hadn't known better, she would have thought he was waiting for a board meeting, not the fallout of a brewing war. You're up early, he said without turning. So are you. He faced her then, eyes searching her face like he was already reading her answer. That made her chest tighten. I wanted to talk, she said. I know. He gestured to the chair across from him. She didn't sit. Standing felt safer, like she still had options. You said I had a choice, she began. I want to understand what that really means. Adrian nodded once. Fair. He moved to the desk but didn't sit, resting his hands on its surface instead. No barrier between them. No authority posture. You can leave, he said plainly. Today. I'll arrange transport, documents, money. Somewhere far enough that Viscari can't reach you easily. I'll keep eyes on you from a distance. And the baby? His jaw tightened. The same. Protection. Discretion. But not you, she said softly. Not me, he agreed. The words landed heavier than she expected. And if I stay? She asked. Then you stay by choice, he said. Not as leverage, not as an obligation. You stay beside me, knowing exactly what my world is, which is dangerous, she said. Yes. Violent. At times. And unforgiving. Always, she swallowed. You're not making this sound very appealing. A ghost of a smile crossed his mouth. I'm not trying to sell you a fantasy. Silence stretched between them. Madison paced once, then stopped. You could lock me in here, she said. Force me to stay. No one would stop you. That's true, Adrian replied evenly. Why don't you? Because then you'd never trust me, he said. And I'd rather lose you than own you. The honesty stole her breath. She wrapped her arms around herself. If I leave, will you stop him? Yes. Completely? Yes. And if I stay, I become part of the target. You become part of my line, he said, which is harder to cross. Her pulse raced. You're asking me to choose danger. I'm asking you to choose truth, he replied. Running doesn't erase what's already begun. It just means facing it alone. She thought of her old apartment, of Connor's messages, of being invisible until she wasn't, of how quickly her world had narrowed to fear and survival. Then she thought of this house, of Adrian standing between her and everything that wanted to hurt her, of the way he looked at her, not like a problem to solve, but a person who mattered. You said the child changes everything for you, she said quietly. Yes. Why? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was lower, stripped of polish. Because I've spent my life protecting things I built, he said. Power, territory, reputation. This, he nodded toward her stomach, is something that exists without calculation. It reminds me there's more than survival. Her throat tightened. And you? He asked. What does it change for you? She closed her eyes. It changes everything, she thought. It changes who I am, who I'm willing to become, what I'm willing to fight for. When she opened them again, she was steady. If I stay, she said, I don't want to be hidden away. I don't want to be kept in the dark. You won't be, he said immediately. I want honesty, even when it's ugly. You'll have it. And if I ever decide to leave, she added, you let me go. Adrian stepped closer, close enough now that she could feel the warmth of him. I will. She searched his face for hesitation, for manipulation, found none. The house seemed to hold its breath again as she made her decision. I'm not staying because I'm afraid, Madison said softly. I'm staying because I choose you. Something fierce and unguarded crossed Adrian's face, and in that moment, with the world watching from the shadows, Madison stepped forward, choosing him, not because she was trapped, but because she was ready to stand beside the man who had changed her fate. The snow melted before spring arrived. It retreated slowly from the grounds, revealing dark earth beneath the white, as if the world itself were shedding an old skin. Madison watched it from the terrace one quiet morning, one hand resting on the gentle curve of her stomach, the other wrapped around a mug that had long since gone cold. 4 months. That was how long it had been since she chose to stay. The estate no longer felt like a fortress. Not entirely. The gates were still there. The guards still changed shifts with silent precision. The cameras still watched every angle. But the fear that once lived in her chest had softened into something steadier. Belonging. Adrian stood a few steps away, speaking quietly with Lucia about logistics, doctors, legal documents, things that sounded mundane but carried the weight of permanence. Papers had been signed, names added, futures quietly secured behind closed doors. No one asked questions anymore. Not because they were afraid, but because the answer was understood. Madison Cole was no longer just under protection. She was family. The realization still startled her sometimes. Family had always been fragile in her life. Conditional, temporary. Something that could disappear with one wrong conversation, one unexpected truth. Here it was different. Adrian didn't hover. He didn't cage her. He stood beside her. When she walked through the house, conversations didn't stop. They shifted to include her. When decisions were made, she wasn't shielded from them. She was consulted, respected, chosen. The threats didn't vanish overnight. They rarely did. But the warnings stopped. The blood-stained messages ceased. Luca Viscari's name became something spoken only in past tense, his influence quietly dismantled by patience and precision rather than spectacle. Adrian never bragged about it. He simply came home one evening, loosened his tie, and rested his hand over hers where it lay on her stomach. "It's done," he said. She didn't ask how. Some things were better left unspoken. As the months passed, life settled into something that almost resembled normal. Doctor appointments became routine. Late-night conversations replaced fear-driven silences. Sometimes she caught Adrian standing in the doorway of the nursery that had appeared without announcement. Dark wood, soft light. A future built quietly rather than promised loudly. He never touched her stomach without asking. Never assumed. Never claimed what she hadn't offered. That mattered more than he probably knew. One night, weeks before the end of the year, Madison woke from sleep to find him sitting beside her, eyes fixed on the rise and fall of her breathing. "You okay?" she murmured. He nodded. "Just making sure I don't wake up and find this was something I imagined." She smiled softly and reached for him. "It's real." "So is the responsibility," he replied. "And I won't fail it." She believed him. On New Year's Eve, exactly 1 year after the night everything unraveled, the estate was quiet. No parties, no crowds. Just a handful of people who mattered gathered on the terrace overlooking the valley. Snow had returned, light and clean, settling gently across the land. Madison stood wrapped in a thick coat, Adrian's arms around her from behind, his hands resting protectively where their future shifted beneath her ribs. Fireworks bloomed in the distance. Gold, red, white. The same colors as last year, but everything else was different. She wasn't alone. She didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel afraid. Adrian leaned down, his voice close to her ear. "Do you regret it?" She shook her head. "Not for a second." The fireworks reached their peak, lighting the sky in brilliant arcs. Somewhere far below, the world celebrated another year beginning. Madison rested her head against his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat beneath her cheek, and understood something she hadn't a year ago. A legacy wasn't just power, or money, or fear. It was who stood with you when the world turned. And as the final firework faded into smoke, Madison smiled, knowing that this time, when the new year began, she was exactly where she was meant to be.